lawyer and Arise analyst Frank Tietie joins me now to make light of this. Good to see you and thanks for your time. It's amazing this debate is coming back, but again, let's start by asking how this news was received by you.
Oh, highly disappointing. It shows that much of the campaigns against the barbaric act of the application of death sentence hasn't done much in Nigeria, and to think that it has been applied to an offense that where you can easily frame anybody up. It makes it very dangerous to think that this is the mindset of the people who make our laws. I'm happy that no matter how feeble the voice of Adams Oshomale may have been there, but he was just saying the plain truth. You couldn't deal with such an important issue like death sentence with just a casual voice vote. And they must be reminded that there are already existing laws to a large extent that outlaw the death sentence and the death penalty in Nigeria. But I must understand the emotions of the senators, because when you see the ravaging problem, the drug epidemic that is raging in Nigeria, particularly in northern Nigeria. So if you see northern senators that are supporting the death sentence for drug trafficking, they have necessarily been emotive, but they're not correct, they're not right. That is not expected in a modern society, in a progressive society like Nigeria. Now, the Child Rights Act, which deals with persons all under 18, totally outlaws the application of the death penalty for all persons in Nigeria who are below the age of 18. Nevertheless, when you go to Area 1, when you go to, as it used to be in Mogadishu Street in Abuja, the people you find involved in peddling drugs are young persons. So are you telling me that what you want to do is to apply death penalty for just finding a certain kind of narcotics, particularly heroin or cocaine, in the hands of a 17-year-old, or a 19-year-old? So it's not well thought out at all. In an age where the United Nations has progressively, made efforts to get every country. Nigeria actually is a signatory to many of those international instruments, and there is an effective moratorium on the application on death execution. I mean, execution of criminals on death row in this country. So we're trying to be a humanizing or humanistic environment, and not bringing back the days of the military, the days of firing squad, the days of reminding us of how do you shoot armed robbers. Forgetting, and I keep mentioning that late Justice Akinola Aguda had warned that the idea, the misuse, the abuse of the death penalty, of the death sentence, the use of firing squad, it cheapens life, and that's what he was able to trace it, that it accounted for the high rate of armed robbery we experienced in the 70s and 80s in this country. Why would our Senate give the impression to the world that life is so cheap in our country? Yes, we still know that there are countries like the United States and Nigeria that are retentionist countries, they retain the death penalty, but they do that only for extremely, difficult issues like murder. Because when somebody carries out murder on a cold-blooded level, it is assumed that that person has lost humanity. Now, to ensure deterrence, you can apply the death sentence. And so if you are saying something like that with regards to terrorism, and one would understand, and who are those persons who are even mooting, shouting and praising the application of death sentence, when in fact they should also be quick to mention countries that are applying the death sentence to corruption, cases of corruption, to embezzlement, to inflation of contracts, to padding of budgets. Don't they know that there are other countries that also apply the death sentence to that? Barbaric countries, unprogressive countries like North Korea and some others. So when we must realize that we are Nigeria, and because of the multifarious nature of our people and the way they get involved in business, you don't just come and say for somebody carrying a small bits of cocaine, it should be upon conviction sentenced to that. It means that all you need to do as a law enforcement agent who is unhappy with anybody, you just frame them up, put something in under the carpet of a car or whatever, and then the person will be facing death sentence, forgetting that the bottom line is that we are in an age that is vehemently against the prevalence or the application of the death sentence.
Because if you look at the latest figures from Amnesty International, compiled the official statistics, it says, there were 883 executions worldwide in 2022, and this total excludes China, that has refused to let the world know the figure of those it has executed. Now, as we wait for the House of Rep to also look at this argument, what should the lawmakers, because your argument is very germane. We've had a case here in Nigeria, the lady who was framed, who found herself in Saudi Arabia on death row,
Yes.
but somehow she was lucky to be alive today.
Because the very president of Nigeria had to wade in. You understand? And you see, that is how dangerous it is. You know, the drug epidemic that is hitting this country, particularly northern Nigeria, and particularly Abuja, I don't know how to be able to sound the alarm, because it appears that the authorities are not doing anything. It appears the NDLA, perhaps, that is behind this amendment, is not looking at the issues of enforcement, in fact prevention, in fact rehabilitation of these persons. Why are we trying to always use this sledgehammer approach in trying to kill an ant? Why? We must apply some sociological solutions by understanding the processes, the people. Why have we had a number of our youths, large number of youths, particularly from elitist homes, tending towards the drugs? And that's the reason why the senators are threatened.
Is there any advantage?
In what sense? Are you saying that there is no advantage in the application of death penalty? You just lose your children, and then because the real barons are not in Nigeria, they are far away in Latin America and other places, and then you want to now begin to deal with your citizens as if they're just conduits. They're just they're just transporters, I would say. So you can't just reduce life as a result of prevalence of narcotics, the abuse of narcotics. Whereas if you empower the NDLA more with better skills, with more funding, we will be able to prevent the prevalence of drug abuse in our country, which is actually ravaging. I understand the senators that I've seen, they have come face to face with the threat of drug abuse. We see them every day. It's their children, many of them, because they are the ones who can give their children, whose children can have that kind of money to buy cocaine or heroin or any of those top meds that they can be manufactured. And they know their beloved children are the ones threatened, but you don't, react emotionally. You have to understand that this is Nigeria, and we have we have abused the application of death penalty, particularly in the days of the military. It was terribly abused. Life became so cheap. And what you must understand, when you think that by applying the death penalty for any particular crime, you are carrying out deterrence, no, you're actually hardening the persons who are getting involved, because we're talking about those who are addicted. They know that they've got one life. In that case, the cartels will be more brutal. They will be more sophisticated in the way they go about it. The issue the Senate ought to have dealt with is how is the NDLA not being able to reduce the prevalence of drug abuse in our country? That's what they should deal with. And I believe that there are several ways that the NDLA can be empowered to do and take care of our children, prevent the prevalence, rather than thinking of killing our people. In this age, it's barbaric. It's unthinkable. An offense that is not cold-blooded, something that has to do with peddling. No. I think we can do better than this.
And lastly, before I let you go, for Adams Oshomola, he spoke about the seriousness of this. And a lot of times we haven't actually gone into voice votes in the National Assembly.
Yes.
How important is voice vote, electronic voting?
It's very important.
Voting as against voice vote.
Well, no, voice vote looks like a mockery. The idea is that when you sense the unanimity on the House, you are able to call for a voice vote so that you don't waste the time. But in electronic voting, when you know what each senator or each member of the House of Representatives votes for, you are able to hold him accountable. You are able to say, look, you ought to even get the death penalty first before coming here now to say that the death penalty be applied to our children, to be applied to persons who made mistakes or persons who are framed up. I am not in any way supporting those who are involved in this drug trade. For goodness sake, it is threatening our national security. It is threatening our future as a country. When you have the prevalence, you need to see how it's ravaging children right now in the FCT. Now, but this is the solution. coming by creating more problems? No. So Adams Oshomole was absolutely correct, and I would most respect, difference to the Deputy Senate President, he was not correct to say that, no, that you are subjecting the issue of life to the mere technical rules of the Senate. You cannot do that. But I have some measure of consolation. We have a president that I consider that is very progressive minded. We are also going to the House of Representatives, which is akin to the House of Commons, which I believe is more in touch with the reality. This will not fly. Certainly will not fly.
Frank Tietie, a delight having you on Newsnight.
My pleasure.